The Book of Us, Attraction, by Vivid Universe. Chapter 2, Entropy. Entropy, noun. Thermodynamics, the degradation of the matter and energy in the universe to an ultimate state of inert uniformity. The second law of thermodynamics states that entropy increases with time. But I'm looking forward to tomorrow, and the days that are changing. I like them. It makes me go crazy. Sweet chaos. Sweet Chaos by Day 6. Life juggling an internship, college, and socializing ends up starting off pretty calm. It takes on about a month to settle down into a weekday routine that she's happy with, and it ends up following a rhythm somewhat like this. 7 a.m. Snooze alarm number 1. 7:05 a.m. Snooze alarm number 2. 7:10 a.m. Snooze alarm number 3. 7:15 a.m. Snooze alarm 4. 7:20 a.m. Get a wake-up call from Haruka, who's always up at 7 in the morning sharp for her morning jogs. On Raquel Shiraishi. Get the fuck up right now, Haruka says, every single time. All right, I'm up. An replies tiredly, every single day. My middle name's not Raquel. I know. Haruka hangs up. 7:30 a.m. Wash face, get ready for the day, snarf down a cereal bar and a protein shake, on the good days, and call it a decent breakfast. 8 a.m. Head to Router Labels, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, / walk the campus for Akito, Tuesdays, Thursdays. 10:30 a.m. Take a break and talk to Kohane, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. Are you doing homework? An asks, peering over the receptionist's desk. Kohane sighs before slowly banging her head on the desk. She takes a deep breath and looks at An, square in the eye. Can you help me with Gauss's law of magnetism? What are these words coming out of your mouth? An replies. 12 p.m. Grab a lunch from the Router Labels Cafe, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday. Or at a campus dining hall of Akito, Tuesdays, Thursdays. My meat looks weird, An complains, poking at her dish with a fork. Akito chomps down on a bite of the same dish, before reaching for a napkin and spitting it out. He chokes out a, yeah, don't eat that. 12:15 p.m. Grab convenience store food or a Taco Bell instead. Tuesdays, Thursdays. Definitely not healthy, but fuck that shit that's going on in the dining hall. 12:30 p.m. Walk the campus with Akito. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. 12:45 p.m. Go to Router Labels. Tuesdays, Thursdays. 2 p.m. Take a break and talk to Touya. Tuesdays, Thursdays. Did you know, Touya begins, a lion in the wild makes no more than 20 kills a year? I make more in a single game of close game offline. An stares at him judgmentally. Stop watching National Geographic. 4 p.m. Go home, hoping that there's not a Mizuki jump scare waiting at the front door, and then run any necessary errands. Grocery shopping, getting toilet paper, making sure the good old bank account isn't dying, meal prep, laundry, and other stuff that might arise. Surprise! Mizuki exclaims, jumping out in front of An at her front door. Let's hang out! Sure, An nods as she unlocks her door. Wanna help me fix a leaky faucet? How about you fix your faucet? Mizuki bouts her eyelashes. And I sit on the counter and look pretty and talk my mouth off? 5 p.m. Do homework and study. Ew. 8 p.m. Eat dinner with Mizuki and Haruka if the Mizuki jump scare happens. Otherwise, pretend that the loneliness isn't smothering and enjoy a meal. 8:30 p.m. Clean up and get back to any leftover homework or internship work. 10:30 p.m. Shower, wash face, prepare for bed, and the sweet, sweet release of sleep. 11 p.m. Attempt to sleep. Fail and watch YouTube for an hour. 12 a.m. Actually fall asleep. All in all, it's a routine An is pretty satisfied with. It's orderly, following a rhythm that she likes a lot, and it's easy, allowing her time to actually take care of herself. And through it, she gets to not only get her work done like a girl boss, but also spend time with the people around her. Speaking of those people, Mizuki and Haruka are insufferable as always, but An is 99.99% sure that she would have died from loneliness without them. So, for every time she smacks Mizuki with a pillow or scolds Haruka during her wake-up calls, her heart isn't angry at them, but rather grateful that they care so much about her to still be in her life. Kohane and Touya turn out to be, well, just as cool as An expected them to be, which is not cool. They both aren't major dorks, with Kohane constantly complaining about the newest physics concept she's learning, and Touya info-dumping about the National Geographic he watches as a coping mechanism for suffering over computer science. And An wonders if these two are literally made for each other. She and Akito get along pretty well too. Of course, it's only been a month into An's new life, and he's still awkward from time to time, but he doesn't mind giving her company whenever they're headed to class or grabbing food after. She learns a lot about him, from how he absolutely hates the meat in the school's dining hall, so does she, to how his go-to for convenience store food is katsudon bento. But to An, that feels a little too superficial. Anyone who ends up in the same place as Akito when it's lunchtime will eventually learn that he hates dining hall meat and that he loves katsudon. So she doesn't want to jump the gun and call them besties, but she is comfortable with calling him a good acquaintance, maybe even a friend. She just doesn't know if Akito considers her a friend. Anyways, this is about An's routine and her solar system being tighter knit than ever before. This is not about her relationship with Akito. She could live like this forever, staying in the peaceful moments, speeding through life easily and remaining in her comfort zone. But, as we know, life doesn't like comfort. Once you get a little too satisfied with your life, you'll end up with 50 curveballs thrown at you at 90 miles an hour heading straight for your face. Interactions lead to chaos, and An is about to learn that. Here's what happens next. It's the middle of An's shift at Router Labels, and she's in the middle of curating posts to celebrate 10 million streams for one of the artists, More Jump, when her stomach growls loudly. She flushes sheepishly as her cubicle neighbors give her a strange look, wondering where the pseudo-whale's mating call is coming from. And she apologizes for the disturbance. She can really go for a snack right now, that's for sure. So she gets up and walks over to where the vending machines are on her office floor. Usually, she waits until she gets home to eat, but today she had a really late lunch because her stomach is hurting in the morning. And that's how she ended up using the vending machines for the first time. Her jaw drops upon seeing the delicious and eclectic section of snacks and drinks in the vending machine. Honey buns, rice crackers, Pocky, the mint chocolate one said that, Kit Kats and more. An has to physically restrain herself from drooling into temptation by biting her tongue. This is a professional environment she's in after all. Try the Pocky. A voice startles her. An jumps in surprise before she recognizes whose voice that is, and she turns, only to see Akito standing next to her, scanning the options as well. This is unexpected. An had been under the assumption that Akito's department was on a different floor, but then again, An is always too immersed in her work to leave her cubicle often. She decides to label this encounter as a pleasant surprise. Could you be any stealthier? She chuckles and Akito shrugs. My bad. Didn't know you'd be here. I didn't know you'd be here either, An responds as she stares at the vending machine again. Is Pocky any good? I've never had it before. Yeah, it's Pocky. Akito smiles softly. Pocky is always good, no matter the flavor. Hang on. With that, he pulls out his credit card and swipes on the vending machine's card reader before pressing the buttons that correspond with the Pocky box in question. The box slides out from the shelf and drops into the retrieval area, where Akito pushes the vending machine door and grabs it. He's quick to open the box and hold it in front of An. Take your pick, he smirks, and An looks at him surprised. Wait, It's no big deal. If you don't like it, I'll just eat the rest. But this way, you can try it without spending any money, right? Akito reasons, and An realizes that he actually has a point. So she carefully draws out a stick of Pocky from the box and takes a bite out of it, before letting out a small noise with the perfect amount of sweetness that bursts in her mouth. It's so good! She exclaims. See? Akito grins. You can never go wrong with Pocky. I didn't know you were such a sweet tooth, An giggles in return. Yeah, Akito chuckles before he hands the box to her. Anyways, it's yours. Wait, she protests. You bought it. It's only fair that I get my own. Nah, Akito rubs the back of his neck. I came here to get a drink anyways, so it's all yours. An reaches for the box, but wavers, and Akito watches her, intrigued at her inner turmoil upon being treated to a box of Baki. He smiles understandingly. Seriously, consider it a really belated congratulations gift. What do you mean? An asks curiously. For your apartment, for the internship, all that stuff, Akito replies coolly. Congratulations. An realizes that she has no choice but to accept this gracious gift, so she smiles sheepishly and musters out, Thanks, Akito! Don't mention it, Akito grins. Anyways, we should probably get back to work. I'll see you later. An nods. Yeah, I'll see you around. With that, An makes her way back to her cubicle, trying but giving up on fighting the smile that automatically grows on her face. Friends treated each other to food, right? He's getting more comfortable around her. They're friends. The thought of that makes An's smile grow even wider. And friends they turn out to be. The next day, An finds Akito waiting outside her door, rather than in the front of her apartment where they usually met up before they walked to campus. And she doesn't feel surprised at all, just pleased. Hey, she grins. Akito smiles back. Sup, let's go? Yeah. It's a short exchange, but it feels more comfortable rather than awkward like it initially did. They're quick to ease into a conversation about food, since it was such a hot topic from the day before, and An finds herself asking Akito about what his favorite food is. Easy. Pancakes, he replies nonchalantly, looking straight ahead before glancing at An. They're the best. You're such a sweet tooth, An replies playfully in return. Really? And you're not? Akito asks. What's your favorite food? Rum raisin ice cream, An answers almost instantly before she laughs. I suppose you're right. It's just how it is. People who like sweet food are the sweetest people. Akito jokes, and An laughs before what he says sinks in and she finds herself doing an internal double take. Sweetest people? Does he think I'm sweet? She finds herself dwelling on the statement. Akito takes An's silence as a sign to ramble, so he continues. Anyway, I've never tried rum raisin ice cream before. Where do you usually get it? My dad's cafe, An replies. It's all the way back in Shibuya, though. Well, when I go back to visit, I'll make sure to stop by. Akito smiles. It sounds delicious. I'm sure you'll love it, An nods assuredly as she nears the steps leading up to the entrance of the music building. See you later, she waves. Akito nods. See ya. Once Akito walks away, her mind comes back, thinking at full force. That was kind of sweet, she thinks. He would want to visit Dad's cafe. Akito has a point. Maybe the sweet tooth people had the sweetest personalities. An wouldn't admit it out loud, though, because if he took it the wrong way, that would make the distance between them grow again, and everything would be awkward again. But she definitely doesn't want that, so she keeps the revelation to herself and goes about the rest of her day. She goes about the rest of her day as planned, along with the next and the one after that. But after a couple days, a twist is thrown in her routine, and it sends her spiraling. It starts off pretty simple. She's taking her typical afternoon work break, and she does it as she usually does, by greeting Touya at the receptionist desk and having a quick conversation. The two of them get along pretty well, always surprising each other with fun facts and interesting tidbits from their day. Her conversations with Touya resembled the office life she dreamed of as a kid, where she did her work to the best of her ability and had friends she could chat and gossip with. In short, she's really glad she has Touya and Kohane because they make her feel at home. Hey, Touya! An greets as she walks by the desk. Touya smiles and greets her in return. How's it going today, An? Going pretty okay. It's been a slow one today, she responds. What about you? Same here. I've been doing my homework to keep myself busy. An peers over the counter and sees Toya's laptop. The screen filled with lines of absolute gibberish. Touya calls the gibberish code, and An thinks gibberish describes it better, and she immediately gets so overwhelmed looking at it that she diverts her attention away. Yeah, that looks like a real mental workout, she jokes. Touya chuckles along. You know, he begins, if you came down a few minutes earlier, you would have met the other intern, Akito. Really, she thinks, not surprised. Interesting. I know him already, An replies nonchalantly, and Touya raises a brow. You do? How so? I've never seen you two interact, he asks curiously. Turns out we're neighbors, An giggles. Interesting, Touya replies, placing his hand on his chin, almost as if he was stroking an imaginary beard. An didn't understand what was so interesting about it, so she just watches him, amused. Anyway, An continues, I have a fun fact for you today. You do? Touya exclaims excitedly. Fire away. Did you know, An states, the Game Boy was the first video game console to be played in space? Touya gasps. You used my love for video games. I love you so much right now. Platonically. I know, An winks before checking her watch. Anyway, I better head back. I'll catch you later, Touya nods as she walks off. And don't forget, make today count. When have I not? An laughs as she gets into the elevator. She doesn't understand why Touya chooses to end every conversation with that, but she's always game to play along. She refuels her internal motivation and gets ready to make the rest of her day count. The elevator dings, and she emerges through the doorway once the doors slide open, making her way across the office floor, only to find her manager and Akito waiting in her cubicle. Her heart nearly drops out of anxiety. Normally, her manager wouldn't stop by unless there was a pressing issue. Oh God, what if she is the pressing issue? What if she spent too long talking to Touya Kohane and grabbing food that her manager thought Akito could take her job? Is she going to get fired? You never know if you never bother to find out, An, she tells herself, before she approaches the duo. Minatasaki-san, An greets her manager, nervously bowing, before nodding at Akito. Akito, is there something you guys need? Oh, good, you're back, her manager greets back, with no hostility in her voice. An feels her clenched heart relax just a bit. I just wanted to talk to you both about an upcoming project, so I'm hitting two birds with one stone. And her heart relaxes completely. Akito gives her a small wave, and she smiles back. All right. An claps her hands eagerly. What's the project? So, as you know, one of our artists, Leonid, is dropping their newest album in a month and a half. We all are excited for their release, but at the same time, some of our bigger artists also have upcoming albums. Since you're responsible for helping with social media promotions, and Akito is in the graphic design department, we want you two to run the promotional social media campaign for their album and help with album design. I'll be supervising and approving all your work, but you're going to need to work more hours. Are you guys up for it? Definitely! An nods without hesitation. She feels Akito waver next to her, but he also agrees before turning to An and smiling crookedly. Looks like we're teammates now. Teammates, An repeats in her head. In her opinion, teammates felt like a step up from just friends. Friends are people who get along, people who you can go to when times get rough, people who support you no matter what happens. Teammates are people whose hearts beat the same rhythm, who both drive each other to succeed, and who fall together when they fail. The extremity of the label weighs down on An's shoulder as she smiles and bumps fists with Akito. Yeah, teammates, she replies. While she isn't entirely sure if her heart could keep up with Akito's beat, she's not going to go down without giving it a try. Fortunately, An's heart ends up beating the same rhythm as Akito's. The new project is all An finds herself thinking about for the next 12 hours. While she's working on managing Rider Label's social media pages, she thinks about what songs Leo Need could have composed and what schedule of promotion would work best to perform the up-and-coming band and help boost them to stardom. And she finds herself stuck. And, as she always does when she's stuck, Han finds herself dwelling on the concept until a revelation strikes her. While she cooks, she thinks. While she does her homework, she thinks. While she folds her laundry, she thinks. While she sleeps, the thinking haunts her through her dreams. She keeps thinking, and no ideas are hitting her, and the increasing buzzing in her brain is irritating her. By the morning, she's so strung up in frustration due to her foggy brain that when she runs into Akito outside the building, she yells out, "Akito, I can't take it anymore!" Akito's eyes widen before he gently grips An's shoulders and shushes her. "People are sleeping, An," he comments calmly. "What's up?" An takes this opportunity to jump into a ramble, letting out the pent-up buzzing in her brain. "I can't think of anything to do to promote Leo Need. I've been trying to think of any ideas that feel right to me, but I've just been stuck." "Whoa, chill, you're speaking at, 50 words a minute," Akito chuckles. An deadpans in response, raising a brow at Akito skeptically. "Please, you were probably thinking about it too." "I haven't, actually," Akito shrugs. "I like to leave my work issues at work. I'm going to start thinking when we actually listen to Leo Need's tracks in our meeting today." "Oh!" An glances down awkwardly. "I guess I got a little too excited. Sorry." "Nah, don't apologize." Akito grins as he and An begin walking. "I think it's cool that you're getting that excited over this. You must be really into music." "Oh," An murmurs before breaking into an infectious smile. Yeah, I am. Thanks." It's nice to feel understood, especially when facing a world that only deals harsh judgments. An holds the compliment close to her heart once she parts with Akito for the commute and carries on about her morning. An hour later, An finds herself in conference room A of Rider Labels. It looks like a conference room straight out of the movies with an elongated pale wooden table and swivel chairs placed around it. There's a projector screen and a whiteboard on one wall of the room, and An feels an excited chill run down her spine. This is her first ever meeting. "Whoa, I can feel your nerves from here," Akito laughs, standing next to her. "You ready?" "Ready as I'll ever be," An nods confidently. With that, they both walk in and take a seat next to each other. An eagerly pulls out a notebook and fountain pen from a messenger bag, and Akito stares dumbfoundedly at how prepared she is. In response, he digs in his blazer pocket and fishes out a sticky note with a stick figure in one corner and a really short pencil, and sets it on the table in front of him. An stifles a giggle. "What's so funny?" Akito asks teasingly, knowing that his lack of preparedness was the answer. "I just assumed you were the kind of guy to take notes during these meetings," An replied pointedly. Akito shrugs half-heartedly. "Was never really that good at note-taking anyway. I just wasn't the most studious kid in high school or anything, and I'm just using this internship as an opportunity for job experience." An wants to reply that he's making sense and his points are valid, but before she could, their manager enters the conference room, carrying a laptop bag in tow. She perks up at the sight of the two of them. "All right, you two are here early," she greets with a smile. An and Akito nod, and Miss Mino Tazaki hooks her laptop up into the projector's input. "So, I talked with Leo Need yesterday, and they gave me their full album's track list. Using that, we need to design an album cover and a schedule to tease parts of the albums. We'll start off by listening to the tracks, and I'll give you guys about a week to brainstorm the ideas you want to implement, as the release is in a month and a half." "All right." An nods obediently. Akito shoots the manager a thumbs up as the manager opens up a file and begins to play the new album. An and Akito listen intently, wowed by every single track that Leo Need created, and time flies. The album is the right length, but it still feels so short to the duo because they were caught up in the music. "Wow," An mutters. "That was an amazing album." "Right?" Akito appends, and the manager laughs. "My thoughts exactly. I'm having a hard time imagining how to capture all the songs into one cohesive image, but I feel like you both will be able to do it together." An opens her mouth to say something about how there were no guarantees to that statement, because things like creative blocks do exist, but Akito interjects. Yeah, we'll definitely be able to handle it. An looks at him suppressedly, and Akito smiles knowingly at her, telling her subconsciously that he's got her back and he expects her to have his back too. An nods, ignoring the way the tips of her ears heat up in excitement. Yep, we're a dynamic duo. We got this. Most of the week ends up flying by in a messy flash. A blur of internship work, schoolwork, housework, and a lack of sleep. For An and Akito's project in particular, the week ends up looking somewhat like this. Day 1, talk over lunch. Come up with nothing. I don't understand how I can make this album with a cohesive concept without it being overwhelming. Akito sighs before biting into his convenient stir food. An nods. Neither can I. The only way I can think of it is color vomit. Yuck, Akito gags. Don't ever joke about that. Day 2, spend the day at one cubicle. Come up with nothing. What do you think of this promotion schedule? An asks, showing her notepad to Akito. We're trying to hype up fans, he says bluntly after taking a quick look. This looks like it will cause 50 Leonid-related fangirl deaths. An takes another look at the scribbles littering the page. Okay, maybe you're right. Day 3, talk over lunch. Come up with, you guessed it, nothing. Did you come up with anything new? An asks, peering over Akito's shoulder, only to see a mostly blank sketchbook page. Nope, Akito shakes his head. But look at this ladybug with a top hat I drew. Oh! An gushes. That's so cute, what the fuck? Day 4, sit in one cubicle. Tried to come up with something. End up trolling followers on Twitter. Is that person's profile picture a gay murmur jump moment? Akito questions. An squints, taking a closer look. Yep, looks like it. Let's comment nice profile picture on their mention. We are so going to lose our jobs. Do it. Day 5. Take the day off for the weekend, but spend the entire day thinking about it anyway. Day 6. Sleep in a little bit, but be haunted by the lack of ideas via nightmares. That brings us to the last day before Akito and An have to meet with their manager again. That morning, Akito waits outside An's door, as he always does, so they can walk to the front of their apartment complex together. An takes a little while longer to get ready, feeling a bit sluggish after losing sleep trying to come up with a promotion schedule that was exciting, but also didn't give away too much information about the new album. When she finally heads out the door, she finds Akito leaning against the other wall, phone held horizontally in his hands. His earbuds are in, so he doesn't notice An opening the door, instead being hyper-focused on whatever he's watching. For An, it's strange to see Akito so focused. Usually he would space out once in a while during brainstorming sessions, or meetings, or even sometimes during the conversations they'd have. So, needless to say, she ends up observing Akito, intrigued. What could make him so focused? She thinks to herself as she watches him, and Akito finally notices An standing in front of him when he glances up, and he immediately pauses whatever he's watching and greets An. Sorry, I didn't realize you were there, he apologizes. Nah, it's my fault I didn't get your attention. An waves it off nonchalantly. What were you watching? Just an old PSG match I missed. Akito shrugs. An tilts her head in confusion. An old what now? Football. I was watching a match with PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. It's one of my favorite football clubs. Oh, cool. I didn't know you liked football. I'm not a huge fan of it. I prefer basketball, but football's pretty cool. An nods. Yeah, Akito smiles softly, and there's something almost forlorn in his expression. But An cards it off as her sleep deprivation talking. Shall we get going? An asks. Akito nods, his strange expression replaced with a casual smile. An feels something twist in her gut, but she chooses to ignore it. Once again, they end up going absolutely nowhere with their ideas. The entire day is spent leaning back in exasperation in their swivel chairs and silently slamming their heads against their desks. Eventually, they both have to leave for class, so they bid each other an unsatisfied goodbye and spend the entire day distracted. An left us group chat. 3 people. Mizuki. Hey, On! Haru, Mizuki and I want to hang. Are you free tonight? Calling for me now. An-chan, stop! An-chan, but yeah, sure. I can cook dinner. An-chan, how are we feeling about soba? Haru, cool. Mizuki, I love you, An-chan. An-chan, okay. Hello there, my love. Mizuki sings and An opens the door. An raises a brow at them judgmentally. Hi, she begins. Where's Haruka? Stuck at campus. She'll be here soon. Mizuki chuckles as they let themselves in, dragging in along with them, forgetting to close the door in the process. An giggles as she lets Mizuki drag her into the kitchen, watching as her friend climbed on her counter and took a seat. An took that as an opportunity to finish up preparing dinner for the night. Fill me in, Mizuki begins. How's life? An nods. Right, it's been a lot. Sorry I haven't called in a while. Work and school and living alone, it has all been so hectic. I haven't slept properly in a week. Mizuki pats An on the shoulder. Hey, don't apologize. I would never get upset about that kind of thing. You're doing okay, right? The whole lonely thing isn't getting to you too much? Yeah, An lies, not wanting Mizuki to worry. This is supposed to be a fun occasion, and An doesn't really want to be a buzzkill and burden Mizuki by recounting the nights she had trouble falling asleep because the loneliness is building up inside of her. Having her friend's company is more than enough. Before Mizuki can respond, a knock sounds on the door. An pauses her cooking and looks at Mizuki. That must be Haruka. Come on. Mizuki hops off the counter and follows behind An as the two of them make their way to the front door. But An stops in her tracks when she sees Akito standing awkwardly at the still open door. Hey, he waves. Just wanted to let you know you left your door open. Unless you were like, intentionally doing that? Then my bad. Oh! An exhales, embarrassed. Yeah, nope. There's no explanation for that. I've just been so scatterbrained lately. Akito chuckles warmly. No, same. You're good. I get it. An is about to reply when Mizuki clears her throat, very obnoxiously from behind An. Akito raises a brow, and An realizes that, right, Mizuki is still in the room. Oh, right, Mizuki, this is Akito, my coworker and neighbor. Akito, this is Mizuki, my old roommate and best friend. An replies, gesturing over to Akito, and then to Mizuki. Mizuki's face lights up in recognition, and they smile knowingly. Ah, so this is Akito, Mizuki says, with a mischievous lilt to their voice, and An knows that they're plotting something absolutely devious. An's told us a lot about you. Us? Akito responds cluelessly, and An is trying to send brainwaves over to him to tell him to run before he gets caught by Mizuki's shenanigans. Mizuki smirks. Yep, me and Haruka. She's coming over for dinner too. Then, Mizuki gasps like they just made a groundbreaking discovery that would advance the cure for cancer. Oh my gosh, you should join us for dinner! If you don't mind, that is. Mizuki! I mean, Akito begins. I wouldn't mind, but only if An's okay with it? He looks at An expectantly, and An's heart squeezes at the almost puppy-like expressions both Mizuki and Akito are giving her. She knows Mizuki's definitely doing it on purpose, but Akito looks so clueless and innocent in that moment that she lets out a, "Of course I'm okay with it." Sweet! Mizuki cheers as Akito lets himself in, taking off his shoes at the front door. Mizuki is quick to bombard him with questions. What's your major, this? And where are you from, that? And they're quick to find out that Akito shares the same love for fashion as them. Well, Akito begins as he seats himself at the counter with a glass of water, actually sitting on a stool, unlike Mizuki. It's mostly streetwear focused, but yeah, I love coordinating outfits. That's so cool. I'm into the gothic stuff. Mizuki gushes, and Akito raises a brow, responding sarcastically. Really? He drawls, giving Mizuki's outfit a look over. I couldn't tell. An lets out a loud snicker at that, and Mizuki stares at her judgmentally before knocking sounds on the door again. An excuses herself to go answer it, leaving Mizuki and Akito alone. So, Akito, Mizuki begins, smiling innocently. Got any hot sisters? Akito, who had been calmly sipping his water, proceeds to choke on his drink. When An hears loud coughing from the front door, she frantically rushes back into the kitchen, Haruka following close behind, only to see Akito absolutely hacking his lungs out and Mizuki feigning innocence. She quickly rushes over and begins patting his back to help him get whatever it is out of his throat, and she shoots Mizuki a death glare. Mizuki, she begins, what the hell did you do? Nothing, Mizuki purrs. Why do we always assume I'm behind the scene of the crime? Because you always are, Haruka deadpans. Okay, fine. I just asked him a question, Mizuki shrugged. An stares at them. What question? If he had a hot sister? Mizuki replies sheepishly, voice raising up an octave at the end. Han sighs as Akito finally regains his composure. I'm not answering that, he responds. You don't have to, Haruka chuckles before holding out her hand. I'm Haruka, by the way. Nice to meet you. Akito shakes her hand. Akito, nice to meet you too. Anyway, Mizuki continues, I just thought that since you said he was attractive and you're hitting the nail on the head with that one, if he had any good-looking sisters, my sapphic ass could get with that program. Akito nearly chokes on his drink again. He sputters out, You think I'm attractive? An swivels, facing the stove and turning her back to Akito. Dinner's ready! Dinner turns out to be more tame than An expected it to be. With Haruka around, Mizuki delivers fewer out-of-pocket one-liners, and the four of them end up exchanging pleasantries about life at Sekai University. Much to Mizuki's delight, and on surprise, Akito answers their question with a yes. He has an older sister who's a third year at the university. An never branded Akito as a younger sibling type, but rather an only child, because he lived alone. It's a dumb reason, but can you blame An? Mizuki is quick to ask for his older sister's number, to which Akito flat out refuses. Other than that, An is almost disappointed at the lack of chaos in her life at that particular moment. With the absolute shitstorm that had been the past week, this dinner feels like a sunny day. When Mizuki and Haruka finish their food, they bid their goodbyes to An and Akito. It's pretty late at night, and they don't want to be caught walking alone at a dangerous time. By doing that, they also conveniently get out of cleaning duty, and An stares at the mess of dirty dishes before her on the dining table, sighing as she places her hands on her hips. This is going to be tiring. I can help, Akito suggests, somehow knowing what was on An's mind. An stiffens as she turns to look at Akito. No, it's fine. You really don't need to, she begins, only for Akito to chuckle and cut her off. I know I don't need to. I want to. An sighs in defeat. How is she supposed to argue with that? All right, let's do the dishes then. She smiles, and Akito kindly returns a smile back as he picks up his own bowl and glass of water and heads into the kitchen. An sets up the arrangement so that she is scrubbing the dishes and Akito is drying them. They work in comfortable silence until An finishes washing a bowl and hands it to Akito, and their hands accidentally brush against one another. A tingle shoots up An's spine, and the two of them exchange a look before Akito smiles sheepishly. My bad. No, An chuckles, equally sheepish. Don't apologize. Then they fall back into a comfortable rhythm again, and An finally breaks the silence, launching them into a familiar conversation. Did you come up with any ideas for tomorrow's meeting? Nope, Akito responds, popping the P. You? Nope. Dang, Akito chuckles. Some interns we are. Now, don't say that, An chastises lightly. We're doing our best, and we still have time to brainstorm. Sometimes we just have to give ourselves a break. Akito sighs as he finishes drying the last dish. You're right. He sets the last dish in its proper place before turning to An. How are you planning to give yourself a break? Watch TV or something? I don't know. An replies half-heartedly as she begins to walk out of the kitchen. She stops in the doorway and turns to Akito. Do you want to watch something with me? Sure. Akito nods agreeably. What do you want to watch? I'm out of ideas. I like anime, though. I know the perfect one, then. Akito grins. How do you feel about sports anime? And that's how An and Akito find themselves watching Blue Lock the night before their big idea presentation meeting. An pops some popcorn for the both of them and pours 2 glasses of lemonade as they settle down and watch it. And it's comfortable, but a different kind of comfortable. Now, the realization is setting in that Akito is sitting on her couch, in her house, watching TV with her, and it all feels a little too domestic to be real. He seems to have made himself at home, stretching his legs and mimicking An by resting them on the coffee table. Their hands keep brushing together whenever they both reach for another handful of popcorn, and it's a little too much for An's poor touch-starved heart to handle. So she tries her diddly-darn best to focus on the gay sports action going on in front of her, rather than the tingly feelings that she's experiencing in her fingers. That's Bachira, Akito points out as a new character appears on screen. His dribbling is insane. You can dribble in football? An asks, stupefied. I didn't even know you could do that. Well, you always learn something new every day. Akito sits up straight. Holy shit. Did I say something wrong? An asks, worried due to Akito's sudden reinvigoration. Akito merely looks at her with a bewildered smile. I think I finally have an idea. Do you have paper? An gasps as she nods, quickly hopping to her feet and darting to her bedroom, grabbing an empty notebook from her desk and a pencil and sprinting back to the living room to give it to Akito. Akito eagerly takes it and begins aggressively sketching as An switches off the TV and watches him do it. An notices how rushed his sketching is, and how the way he moves the pencil makes it seem more like he wants to get it over with. She finds it interesting how he seems to get more focused when it comes to football, rather than the very action that his job consisted of. I like to leave my work issues at work, Akito's voice echoes in her head, and she chuckles internally. Maybe that's why he didn't seem as focused. It really is none of her business. Akito quickly finishes up and shows An a really rough sketch of an album cover. Akito gestures to the various parts of the sketch and explains, I was trying to capture a theme of learning because this is like the world in Leo Needs' eyes as they grow up. I probably have to refine it a bit, but with this, do you think we could come up with a production schedule? An takes the paper and looks at it, and she finally, after a week's worth of suffering, feels the boatload of ideas belatedly ramming into her, and she's itching to pull out her laptop and work until her fingers fall off. Thank goodness I have you, she laughs excitedly as she pats Akito on the shoulder. I can definitely come up with one. I'll get you some more paper. Once Akito gets his paper, the two of them put on Leonid's tracks, and the hours while away, and eventually Akito looks away from his paper, directing his attention to the clock, and breathes out. Holy shit. An non-committedly hums in return, before Akito replies, stunned. It's 2 a.m. An actually tears her gaze away from her open documents on her laptop to look at the time in the corner of the screen, and Akito's right. Oh, dang! An chuckles guiltily, feeling bad for Akito staying for so long without knowing if he wanted to. Do you want to head back to your place? Akito shrugs before letting out a small yawn. I'm kinda on a roll, assuming you are too. An doesn't need him to say anything else. The night is young. They keep working, with Akito stepping out for a few minutes to go grab some coloring pencils and markers from his place, and they get into a steady rhythm. An finds herself swinging her legs over the arm of the couch and leaning backwards onto Akito's shoulder as she precariously props her laptop on her thighs, and Akito doesn't mind at all, welcoming the comfortable contact as he sketches. The contact serves as a reminder that they're not alone, and that they're working together to get this done. It's 3:30 in the morning when An lets out the loudest yawn ever known to man, and Akito startles before breaking out into a fit of quiet giggles. "You're getting too immersed in your work," he says, almost endearingly, as he gets up. "Do you like coffee or tea?" "Coffee! Extra milk and sugar, please," An replies, glancing away from the screen to smile at Akito gracefully, and Akito nods. "As expected from our sweet tooth." He teases, and An rolls her eyes. "Please, your breakfast menu looks like a diabetes diagnosis." "Okay, touché," Akito smiles. "Can I raid your kitchen?" "Please do," An replies, and Akito takes that as his cue to leave, heading into the kitchen. Eventually, he emerges out, 2 steaming mugs in his hand. He sets them both on the coffee table, since An really didn't give a shit about drip marks and didn't have coasters, and An immediately grabs a mug, taking a swig and burning her tongue in the process. "Ow," she mutters, and Akito bursts into laughter again. Who knew a sleep-deprived Akito was so giggly? "Careful," he chastises, with no bite. "It's hot." "No shit," An shrugs in return, before getting back into her very comfortable position, leaning back against Akito as the two of them work. The hours pass, and it's 5 in the morning when An finally shuts her laptop. "I'm done!" she exclaims, and she feels Akito startle against her back before she hears him compliment her, and she can hear the smile in his voice. "You rocked it, I bet," he says, and An's cheeks flush with pride and affirmation. "I sure did." She swings her legs off the arm of the couch and cozies up next to Akito, peeking over his shoulder as he finishes his drawing. The way he draws is incredibly mesmerizing to An, and despite the chaos of pulling an all-nighter to finish their deliverables, she feels a strange calm wash over her. Eventually, Akito ends up setting his pencil down, and he sighs tiredly. "I'm done." "Good job! It looks great!" An compliments genuinely. Akito turns to face her, before they both realize that with An peeking over Akito's shoulder, their faces were now dangerously close, and if An threatened to move even a few inches forward, her lips would crash onto Akito's. Akito's breath hitches as he slowly processes the situation, and he finds himself meeting An's eyes, and An notices how vibrantly green his eyes are. She internally comments that it's stunning, before she clears her throat. He smiles awkwardly and rubs his neck as the two of them slowly move out so their faces aren't that close. Akito ends up breaking the tension that hangs in the air with a comment that's absolutely exhausted. Turns out, drawing drained all his energy, but at least now they're both done and Akito won't have to pick up a pencil again for a while. An tries to forget how close they were just a few minutes ago, and the way she felt her heartbeat against her ribcage as she processed it. But she ends up carding her reaction as a result of sleep deprivation. There's a time when your filter just comes off when you're lacking sleep, and usually people pretend that what happens during an all-nighter stays with the all-nighter, so An calms herself down and leans back, resting her head on the couch. "You want to catch some shut-eye?" she asks, and Akito nods. "It's going to be like 30 minutes, but yeah. Sleep well." "I'll try." "You too." Eventually, 30 minutes later, An's phone goes off with her alarms, and the two of them, who had fallen asleep sitting on the couch, groan groggily as they wake up. "Oh, switch that off, An," Akito whines, and An sighs tiredly as she reaches for her phone. Yeah, get up." Akito reluctantly gets up, walking over to the door as An follows. He smiles tiredly at her as he slides on his shoes before bidding his leave. "I'll see you in a bit." "Don't drive today," An says suddenly. "You're too sleep-deprived." Akito stares at her in surprise before his gaze softens and he agrees. "Yeah, I'll take the bus with you. See ya." And when An shows up at Akito's door 30 minutes later with 2 large disposable cups of coffee, one for her and one for him, he resists the urge to hug her gratefully. The presentation ends up going surprisingly well, especially considering the fact that An and Akito are collectively running on a grand total of 1 hour of sleep. Their manager beams with pride, impressed at An and Akito's deliverables, and when they exit the meeting room, the two of them nearly collapse in a happy kind of exhaustion. Rather than kneeling over, An finds herself throwing her arms around Akito in celebration. Akito's arms fly up to return the hug, and they stay like that for a second. Akito's taller than An by a perfect amount, so the hug doesn't feel awkward at all, but like home. An feels an explosion starting in her heart. Tendrils of satisfied warmth bursting through her body as she sighs. We did it! Yep, Akito replies, and she can hear his heartbeat. He pulls away, and a tiny part of An wishes the hug lasted a little longer. He smiles so warmly at her, and An feels her brain shutting down, partly because of the sleep deprivation, and partly because she could feel it melting from how pretty his smile was. Moving on. She can only return the favor. You look like you've had a day, Kohane comments when An meets her for lunch, losing the adjectives to describe the train wreck that is a sleep-deprived Aunt Shiraishi. An nods vigorously as she sits down, dropping her tray on the table. Yep, he barely slept. That bad, huh? Kohane smiles sympathetically. What were you doing? An ends up explaining the whole situation, from how she and Akito were still lacking deliverables the night before, and how he joined her and her friends for dinner, to how the two of them pulled an all-nighter and got 30 minutes of sleep, and Kohane's jaw is nearly hitting the table as An finishes. Life has been really chaotic lately, An comments offhandedly. I don't mind it, it's just hard to keep up with it all. Well, you've been out and about, haven't you? Kohane starts. It's kind of like entropy. Kind of like what now? An stares at Kohane dumbly. Kohane hums contemplatively as she stabs her fork into her salad. Entropy! It's a physics concept. Oh, An says simply, already knowing more than she needs to. Hear me out, Kohane giggles. It's the concept in physics and thermodynamics. It's like a measurement of the randomness and disorder in a closed system. Theoretically, it increases with time because more interactions happen. You've been spending a lot of time immersed in your work and around the people you care about, and as time passes, more interactions happen, and your life becomes a little more random and eventful. That actually makes sense, An mutters as she mulls it over. My life is becoming more chaotic because I'm putting all my effort into interacting with the world. Yep, Kohane grins. Now, what do you want to do about that? An hesitates. While the chaos is stressful and definitely too tiring, she definitely doesn't hate the fact that her life is more eventful. If she doesn't keep up with the fast-paced world around her, the black hole of abandonment will swallow her whole, and she would definitely prefer anything over that, even if it meant losing sleep. And that solar system she's dreamed of expanding has finally grown. With Akito, Kohane, and Touya in her orbit now, she wouldn't trade that for the world. She decides she'll take the growing chaos, because with the amazing people by her side, she can definitely handle it all. I'm going to enjoy it the best I can. An nods determinedly. Kohane beams. Atta girl. An wants to beat her past self up. Fun fact! Working late in the office is not enjoyable, and An, who had promised to Kohane the day before that she would enjoy her life in the face of chaos, is finding it really, really hard to keep that promise right now. She groans as the software application she's working with crashes for the 90th time that night. She force quits the application and reopens it, deciding that she'll take a break while it reboots. She gets up and stretches her arms and scrolls through her personal social media feed, laughing at memes, before some movement in the corner of her peripheral vision catches her attention. She glances over to where she detected the movement, and Akito standing by the giant glass windows that overlook the city, on the verge of falling into slumber for a night. She can't help but be confused and a little curious. What's he doing here? She questions internally. She tentatively begins to make her way over to the window, sliding her phone into her pocket. She ends up standing by Akito's side, peacefully watching the city, watching the cars go by beneath their feet, but when they're so high up, it really feels so insignificant. Watching the street lights illuminate the sidewalks and the lights in the buildings intermittently switch off, bidding the town goodnight. It's just her and Akito and the world before them, and it's so calming, especially considering that An was frantically scrambling to get her computer to cooperate with her just minutes before. "This is such a nice view," she murmurs, startling Akito. Turns out he was so immersed in the city view, understandably so, that he didn't even notice An's presence. Akito places a hand over his heart and lets out a sigh of relief when he realizes that it's just An and not an office serial killer coming for his ass. "What are you still doing here?" Akito asks, not hostile, sounding just as tired as An feels. "Exactly what you're doing here," An replies. "Work." "It's late," he says, returning his gaze to the city. "I know," An nods. "This is a welcome break, though." She glances over at him, and there's something brewing behind his contemplative expression. An can't quite place what it is. The bags under his eyes don't go unnoticed, and his skin looks paler from a lack of sleep. But his eyes are just as sharp as ever. Worry bites at her heart, and she ends up placing a hand on his shoulder. "You should go home and rest," she says gently. "You look like you got run over." Akito turns to face her. "You should rest too. We're both overworking ourselves, you know." "Yeah, but—" "No buts," Akito interjects, stepping forward. "If you leave, I leave." An opens her mouth to retort, but Akito playfully places a finger over her lips, shushing her with a mischievous and tired smile, before his eyes widen in realization that his finger is on her lips. He slowly draws his finger away, saying nothing, but giving her an apologetic look, and An would normally get flustered at the way the joviality of the atmosphere dropped into something that felt a little more intimate, but she's under the influence of the drug called sleep deprivation, and so is Akito. The explosions and collisions that occurred in her heart when they embraced the day before come back at full force as she realizes just how close Akito is to her, how embedded he is in her solar system. Despite the proximity, despite the fact that he's become so important to her in the past couple of weeks as a valued friend in her solar system, An feels like they're both still millions of miles away, and she wants to move a bit out of her own orbit to collide with him just once, just to see what it's like. Maybe it's her sleep deprivation deluding her, or maybe it's bringing out what she actually wants. She doesn't know, and honestly, she wants to find out. The feeling washes over Akito too, as he meets her eyes, almost holding in his breath in anticipation for something. He doesn't know what, but it's something big, and all someone has to do is make a move for the two of them to crash together, and An is almost about to. When her phone begins going off, the mood in the atmosphere instantly vanishes, and Akito averts his gaze back to the city, placing a hand over his cheek to hide the blush that threatened to grow from that very special moment. An grumbles as she pulls out her phone, almost disappointed that nothing eventful happened. She had anticipated a bit more entropy in her life. She checks the caller ID and answers the phone. Upon seeing that it's Mizuki, she smiles apologetically at Akito, and he smiles back, telling her non-verbally that it's all right and that she should take care of her business. It isn't the right time, her mind tells her through her disappointment, and she knows Akito knows it too. They're both tired and stressed, and sleep deprivation is distorting their understanding of their world as they know it. It's a good thing, Mizuki called. Really? She can't go risking important parts of her universe just because she's trying to enjoy her life. She doesn't know what she would do if she lost her solar system, after all. She just knows it wouldn't look pretty. How would you feel about a double date? Not even 24 hours after the incident with Akito, An finds herself staring incredulously at Touya as he spouts out an out-of-the-blue question at her. This is a bit too much for her to handle. Okay, scratch that. Not a bit. It's rather way too much for her to handle. What? An replies flatly as she leans on the receptionist's counter, thinking that timing of Touya's proposal is way off. A double date, you know, where two couples decide to hang out together and go on a date to the same place. I know what a double date is, Touya, An replies understandingly. Who were you thinking of taking? Well, I was wondering if you and Akito wanted to join me and Kohane. Touya begins, and An blinks in surprise. Well, she's definitely knocked out after just one sentence. There's so much to unpack, and An finds herself stumbling over her words, trying to just get one coherent sentence out. Akito and I aren't... Wait, you and Kohane? She ends up sputtering out. Yeah, me and Kohane. Touya nods. You're... dating. Yeah, Touya confirms bluntly, before tilting his head innocently. I thought you knew. An shakes her head because, no, she did not know Touya and Kohane were dating. Touya continues. Oh, well, we are. And you and Akito aren't? No, An shakes her head. We're just friends. An image of what they almost did the night before pops in An's head, and An pushes it away, cheeks turning more and more red as she chirps, Yep, just friends. Well then, do you want to hang out? The four of us could go to the arcade this weekend. The flusteredness vanishes when the implication of her relationship with Akito becomes platonic, and she almost lets out a sigh in relief. An smiles and nods, excited at the idea of hanging out with her new friends. I'd love that! Akito ends up agreeing to the outing as well, so the four of them set the upcoming weekend for their little hangout, deciding to go to one of Toya's favorite arcades. On that Saturday, An finds herself walking next to Akito on the way to the arcade. Touya and Kohane are walking slightly ahead of them, off in their own little world. And now that An knows that they're dating, they are so painfully obnoxious to watch. Did you know they were dating? She asks Akito. Nope. He shakes his head before looking at An curiously. You? Nope. A comfortable silence washes over them as they keep walking by each other's side. An is honestly so relieved. She had worries that things would become awkward between her and Akito after the incident a couple of nights before, but things had returned to normal between them, and she's enjoying it a lot. Eventually, the couple and their two companions end up at the arcade, and Kohane is immediately hit with an idea the moment they all walk in and purchase game cards. She turns to face the other three as she begins speaking. What if we made this a competition? She grins deviously. Losing duo has to treat everyone to dinner. An wants to protest. She isn't the best at arcade games after all, but Akito places a hand on her shoulder and gives Touya and Kohane a determined smile. Hope you like Hot Pot, because that's where you'll be taking us. Sure, Touya smiles, getting fired up as well. An gives him a look that asks him, Are you insane? Touya is nationally ranked in a couple of competitive video games, and knowing the fact that he frequented this arcade, An is certain that he and Kohane are going to cook her and Akito in every single game here. Akito smiles reassuringly at her upon seeing her glare at him. Don't worry, I've played my fair share of some of these games. The four of them decide to start off with skee-ball, and An quickly finds out that she does have a reason to worry. Touya is bowling straight 5,000s, and Akito is struggling to roll 100s. Akito ends up eating absolute shit on that game, and An and Kohane take their shot, and An still loses to Kohane, but by a smaller margin, giving the win to Touya and Kohane. That was rigged! Akito complains as they walk away from the machines, and An rolls her eyes as she laughs. No, it wasn't. Akito sighs in defeat. No, it wasn't. The next couple of games end up being a series of losses. Touya and Kohane don't miss a single note on Guitar Hero, beat the high score on Down the Clown, and get the jackpot on Black Hole, to name a few achievements, while An and Akito end up missing 15 notes, accidentally hitting a poor, unsuspecting kid nearby instead of the clown, and getting a better luck next time. An pulls out her phone as they move to the next game, beginning to look up some hot pot places that won't stab a hole in her and Akito's wallets before Akito gasps, snapping her out of her focus. I'm actually good at DDR, he murmurs, and An looks up from her phone to find that the four of them are in front of what looks like a Dance Dance Revolution machine, except Hatsune Miku's face is plastered all over it, making it a Vocaloid-themed dancing game. Are you saying that just to save face, or are you actually good? An asks teasingly, and Akito raises a brow at her, asking her, Really? I'm actually good. Come on, let's do this, he announces, looking at Touya and Kohane as he steps into the machine. The couple exchanges a look amongst each other before Kohane steps onto the machine, trying to smile at Akito menacingly, but ending up looking like an indignant hamster. Akito swipes his game card, and Kohane swipes hers, and the two of them go through the song select before they stop on a song called Ready Steady. "How does this one look?" Kohane asks, and Akito nods approvingly. "Looks fun. Let's do it on hard mode." "Solid," Kohane grins. They both press ready, and the song begins. At first, they start off evenly matched on their dancing, but eventually, Akito's faster and sharper footsteps end up giving him the advantage over Kohane's more precise and graceful ones, and he ends up leading by a growing margin. "Whoa," Touya breathes. "He's really good." "As expected of my teammate." An grins, though internally she's just as shocked as Touya is. Akito's footsteps are methodical, coming almost automatically to him like it's been ingrained in him since he was born. An finds herself struggling to keep up with watching both of their footsteps, and Touya chuckles. "I'm really clumsy with this game in particular. I don't know how they're doing this. I mean, Kohane did ballet, but Akito's just cracked." An nods. "Same." The song finishes, and Akito ends up taking the victory, but he gives Kohane a congratulatory high five in the name of good sportsmanship. "You were insanely good. If it was any other song, you probably would have won." He compliments genuinely, and Kohane grins as she slaps Akito's hand. "Me? Insanely good? You're the one who didn't miss a single note. You deserve the win." "All right, Team Touya and Kohane 10, Team An and Akito 1. An announces happily, giving Akito a fist bump as he hops off the coffee machine. "We're catching up." Touya merely laughs at the almost delusional comment before he replies, "Let's take a break. Kohane and I will go grab some water for everyone." An and Akito nod, thanking the couple before they go off to the arcade food court, and An immediately turns to Akito. "Dude," she grins proudly, "you are crazy! How'd you get such insane footwork?" Akito shrugs. "I used to play football in high school. When you dribble your team to nationals, you end up learning a thing or two." "Nationals?" An exclaims in disbelief. "That's crazy! Congratulations!" Akito smiles half-heartedly. "Thanks." A question pops up in An's head after he thanks her, and she ends up dwelling on it as the two of them find a seat nearby to give their legs a rest. It's pretty obvious that football is Akito's favorite thing. He loves watching games, he'd played football matches himself, and he's so invested that he even keeps up with a fruity anime that involves it. So why isn't he doing something with football? "How come you don't play for the Sekai Singers?" "I can't do that." Akito laughs awkwardly, looking at the ground. "Oh, please! You're insanely good!" An smiles encouragingly. She doesn't notice the way Akito begins gripping his knee tightly, or the look of regret that begins swimming in his eyes, as she's too busy trying to hype one of her best friends up. "I bet you could actually make our football team a bunch of winners!" An! Akito's voice comes out loud and rough, raw and unexpectedly harsh. "I can't, okay?" An stares at him in disbelief. This is the first time she's ever heard him be so upset, and she's scared she did something wrong, so she opens her mouth to speak. "Akito, Drop it. Please." He cuts her off as he stands up, before he hesitates, regretting having lashed out at her like that. Eventually, he chooses to run, not looking An in the eyes as he mutters, I gotta go." "Akito, wait!" An calls out, but Akito's already making his way to the door, and a sinking feeling in An's heart tells her that there's really nothing she can do to stop him. The feeling begins eating at her insides as she places a hand over her mouth in realization that she's potentially losing one of her best friends. She chokes out, "I fucked up, didn't I?" She can already see Akito's planet spiraling out of control, slowly leaving her orbit, and she hates it. When Kohane and Touya return, giggling while carrying 4 bottles of ice-cold water, they stop on their footsteps when they see that An is sitting alone, head buried in her hands. Kohane bites her lip out of worry as Touya gently approaches An, sitting down next to her. An looks up tearily and meets Toya's eyes. "Where's Akito?" he asks. An replies wetly, "Gone." She hesitates before continuing. "Hey, Kohane, Is there such a thing as too much entropy? Kohane looks at her surprised before she hums thoughtfully. Not really, though physicists say that eventually our universe won't have free energy to increase entropy, and it will slowly enter a heat Wait, why are you asking? An sighs as she stares blankly into the distance. Before she turns and meets Kohane's eyes, and Kohane can already tell what's coming next based on the pure fear in An's eyes and the shake in her voice as she begins to speak. I think my universe is dying.